Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to remove the ship storage limit in Starfield so you can effectively have infinite ships. Now 10 is the maximum amount of ships you can have in this game by default, but there is another menu that gives you unlimited storage space and you can have as many ships as your heart desires. And this method works on both Xbox and PC. There are no mods required. Now this mechanic has been in Starfield from the very start. It's one of those things you've almost certainly encountered in the game already, you've just never really sat and thought about it. But when you start to have a think about the implications of this, it really does result in you being able to remove the storage cap and have as many ships as you want. It is just so simple. And it's all to do with using your landing pad. So step one is to build a landing pad. Now, if you don't know how to build a landing pad and you're a complete Starfield beginner, do not worry. All you need to do is build an outpost on a planet. So put your beacon down and build an outpost. Once that's done, use your menu to construct a landing pad and make sure it's the big landing pad though, because the smaller one does not have a terminal. Only the big landing pad has a terminal, and this is crucial in getting infinite ship storage. Once we have built our landing pad, go up to the terminal and interact with it. Using the terminal, hit the buy ships option. Here we can see I have 10 ships in my inventory, which is the max amount of ships you can have in Starfield. If I try and buy more, I get this message saying that is just impossible. I cannot possibly buy any more ships. 10 is my limit. But that number only applies to ships in my active inventory. And by that I mean the ships I can see through the ship menu, which is located in the pause menu. By contrast, ship vendors have room for an infinite number of ships. They do not run out of space. That means we can sell literally hundreds of ships if we wanted to vendors and keep them all there as storage. And the best place to do this is at your landing pad. And I'll tell you why in just a sec. Now, before I was thinking of this as simply buying and selling ships into the terminal, and it doesn't really differ that much from selling it to a vendor, but a different way to think about this is that you're simply paying to store your ships here. And that's because on your landing pad terminal you have an infinite amount of storage, as I say, so pick a ship, sell it, and it will remain in the terminal forever. Then to get it out again, all you have to do is buy it. Think of that fee as the retrieval fee, and your landing pad is basically a big yellow storage. So yeah, it's not really about buying and selling, it's about paying to store it and paying to retrieve it. All about a little change of thinking. And before you say you can do all of this at a vendor on a planet or at a settlement, that is true. Vendors also do have an infinite amount of ship storage. However, there is one major reason you'll want to use your own landing pad for this, and that reason is efficiency. The reason we want to use our landing pad is that it's just really handy to have all your ships in one place. If you sell to one of the dozen or so vendors in the game, it's going to be really hard to remember which vendor has which of your ships. But if you put all of your ships in one landing pad, you know exactly where it is in case you want to go back and pick it up again. And this is what this thing is all about. It's all about storing ships you want so you can come and pick them back up again whenever you want. Now, personally, I do a lot of builds that take hours, a lot of ship building, and I really don't want to lose access to my ships. So I'm always swapping ships in and out of my ship inventory. And it's much more handy to do that when you can fast travel directly to a single landing pad and then interact with the terminal, rather than touching down in the settlement, probably having to bypass a contraband scan, then running over to the vendor and having to skip their voice lines until you get to the buy and sell menu. It's just a massive long drawn out process, when instead you could land directly at your landing pad and store your ships there. Now, there's no real financial incentive to storing ships at your outpost by selling them there, rather than selling them to vendors. Like vendors, your outpost terminal will run out of credits. When that happens, you'll sell your ship, but you won't have the funds to pay for it, so you'll just be giving your ship away for free. Then to get it back, you have to pay to buy it again. And that is not ideal, but hopefully you're far enough along in Starfield that credits really aren't that much of an issue to you anymore. And I know they're not really much of an issue for me, but if you are struggling to get credits in Starfield, I have plenty of money making guides on my channel, so make sure to check those out after this video. But yeah, money is not really a big concern in this game for me after the hundreds of hours I've spent playing it, but running out of space for ships is. Space is always at a premium. But by giving them over to your outpost vendor for a fee, you essentially get to store an infinite amount of them right there. And it is possible to still make money when selling your ship to a landing pad at your outpost. because of course when you buy ships from there, you are paying into the pool of money that exists there. All that money you spent on the ship stays with the vendor at your outpost, and it stays there for good. The vendor at your outpost doesn't really exist, it's just a computer terminal, but we will call it a vendor for now. It's a virtual vendor. The money goes into your account at the landing pad, which has an infinite room for money, just like it has an infinite room for ships. There is no cap. Technically, when you sell a ship, you really are just selling it to yourself and paying the money to yourself. It's just that if you actually want to get that money out, you have to then buy ships from yourself. The more you sell, the more money goes into the landing pad. The more you buy, the more money you can then retrieve from the landing pad. This is not an infinite money glitch or anything like that. It's more that this is just a really optimal way of making sure you're making as much money as possible while storing as many ships as you can. It really all just depends on how you look at it, because honestly, I've really only started to look at it this way really recently. Like before, I was looking at ship selling like, well, the money is going into the landing pad, not me. But now I'm thinking, hold on, the landing pad is owned by me. I get that money. I just have to put money back into the landing pad by buying ships from the landing pad, if that makes sense. But again, as I say, you will lose money if you sell for more credits than the landing pad has. So if your ship is worth 100,000 credits, for example, but you only have 10,000 credits in the landing pad, you will only get 10,000 credits maximum for your ship. If they have 0 credits, you will not get any money for your ship. So make sure to always check in the top right corner how many credits is at your landing pad. But there is one question that you might want to know. Do the landing pads have a shared inventory? In other words, if you sell a ship at one landing pad, can you then go and buy it again at another landing pad? That would be really handy, having a big network of ship storage you can access from anywhere in the galaxy, but unfortunately, no, you cannot. Whatever you sell at one landing pad only exists at that specific landing pad. So that is kind of bad news, but again, every landing pad has an infinite inventory, so it's not like you're ever going to run out of space. Just make sure to remember which landing pad at which outpost you're using. I've had it before where I've sold a ship to someone, and then a few hours later I've wanted to buy it back, but I can't remember which landing pad I've sold it at, and that is very annoying. It does mean, however, that each landing pad at your outpost has its own randomly generated library of ships. So if you fancy buying a new ship, build a landing pad and then see what ships they have to sell you, because it is always different. It is important to remember that landing pads do have a shared credits pool though, so you can't build an outpost landing pad, get all of its money by selling your ships there, then building another one and repeating. If you go down to 0 credits at one landing pad, all subsequent landing pads will have 0 credits. So just make sure to keep your landing pad topped up by buying ships from them and therefore paying credits into the shared credits pool. So yeah, it really is all about buying and selling ships really is necessary in this game, because being able to only have 10 active ships in your party, or in your ship inventory in other words, makes you run out of room really fast. If you're like me, you have different ships for different purposes. For me, I've got my uber powerful destroy everything ship, a smaller roleplay ship for when I want to live a more modest life in space, a few creative builds that took many hours to make, like my Halo capital ship or my fighter jet, and a ship with EMP weapons that excels in taking out ship engines so I can board them. And of course, my glitch ships. God bless the glitch ships, which these massively exceed the allotted space you're allowed to have. And of course, this is only possible with mods. On top of that, it's usually worth having at least 2 extra spaces free, so you have more room to steal 2 more ships. There's nothing worse than going to all the effort of stealing a ship, then finding out you've got no room to actually steal it, and then having to leave it where it is. From there, you'll then have to leave the location, go to a vendor, sell a ship from your inventory, then try and go back and find the ship you initially wanted to steal, by which point you might never find it again. So yeah, effectively, you only really have 9 inventory spaces, because if you use the full 10 inventory slots, you will then not be able to have another ship. So that is how to get unlimited ship spaces in Starfield. As I say, it's not exactly a new feature. This has been possible in Starfield from the start, but it's more of a new way of thinking about an existing game mechanic. And I guess it's just something that you're going to encounter the more hours you put into the game and the more ships you collect. Having room for 10 ships ships at the start of the game feels like more than enough, but once you start stealing a bunch of them and buying a bunch of them and start experimenting with the shipbuilder, you will start running out of space incredibly quickly. That's why being able to quote-unquote store an unlimited number of ships at your outpost is invaluable. And yes, you do have to buy them back and buy them back using credits, so it's not storage per se, it's not free storage, but if you're a credits millionaire or you're rolling in credits, it doesn't really matter, it's near enough. And those funds also, they do go back to you. It's not like you lose those credits. That's the end of the video. I have nothing more to say on the subject other than thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and consider sponsoring me over at patreon.com/gamingwithgriffgriffin.